Welcome everyone to our presentation. I am happy to be one of the presenters at the Early Childhood Voices Conference this year. The title of our study is Understanding Scientific Literacy Through Play-Based Settings in the Early Years, a critical review. Associate Professor Lena, Danaia, Dr. Shukla, Sikder, and I, Goutam, are engaged in this study. On behalf of the team, I am presenting the study findings. Before starting, I'd like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri, Nagonoal, Gundungwara, and Biripai peoples of Australia, who are the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which CSU's campuses are located, and pay respect to their elders, both past and present. I would like to thank the Australian Government Research Training Program, International Scholarship, for funding the study as part of my PhD research. I also would like to thank my two wonderful supervisors, Associate Professor Lena, Danaia, and Dr. Shukla, Sikder, for their outstanding support and guidance. In this presentation, I will first present some concepts related to the study, and then I will present the research questions and study methods in brief. I will discuss the findings along with discussions, and finally, I will present the main messages and conclusion. The main issues of investigation of the study is scientific literacy among children in early years. The question is, how is scientific literacy defined? Roberts identified two visions to explain the term scientific literacy. Vision 1 emphasizes the science subjects or contents in which scientific literacy is considered from the perspective of the scientists. In contrast, Vision 2 recognizes that the concept of scientific literacy is not only a matter of science content only, but this concept is also associated with the daily life activities. While Vision 1 focuses on the academic science learning process and products of science learning, Vision 2 considered everyday science learning process and context in which science concept, contents, and applications are embedded. The definition of scientific literacy mainly depends on what was on the focus of the researchers. Focusing on science and literacy independently, and then merging this is considered a short-term view. On the other hand, both in line with the applications are labeled as a long-term view. The recent phenomenon holistically considers both terms. Researchers argue that students need to be knowledgeable about scientific content as well as how to apply it in everyday settings. If the science content considered is to understand the world, the idea of science literacy extends the content in practicing, extending, and refining the knowledge that is one of the core practices of scientific literacy. Therefore, the concept of scientific literacy has moved from the short-term view to the long-term one. This study considers the long-term approach, which ensures the science learning process in everyday life, scientific content or knowledge developed in regular play-based context, children's social and cultural context, and applicability to the real-life situation. This slide focuses on the concept of play-based learning. Vygotsky defined play as the presence of an imaginary situation from which children change or modify the concept of task and objects and convert to a new sense. And play is the main learning activity of children, particularly in the early years. Children gradually realize the role of the world from their imaginary situation through play-based activities. Play is considered as a strong system of learning. Play is also considered one of the essential activities of child development, and early childhood education and play are identical. Play provides the opportunity for children to interact with others, which helps the children to be developed cognitively and physically. Thus, play-based learning is one of the key elements of early childhood education, and preschoolers focus on the play-based program to enhance the development of children. Play-based learning activities in the early years help children develop their intellectual capacity, which is vital to discover the world around them. Play activities also help the children to act logically, as this develops their cognitive functions and capacity for problem solving, self-regulation, and communication skills, which are necessary to develop scientific literacy. Play-based learning activities contribute to develop children intellectual capacity and allow them to interact with others. It also creates a new experience that constructs children's understanding in holistic learning development. In this study, we consider the cultural historical theory of Vygotsky to understand the development process of scientific literacy. Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky provided this theory, in which he explained that people learn and act collectively by doing work. According to this theory, human development, such as cognitive development, is a process of social interaction from which children obtain values, beliefs, and problem-solving approaches. It is argued that people's personal development needs to be aligned with their social and cultural context. Considering this, Vygotsky emphasizes 4 concepts. Number 1, culture affects people's cognitive development. 2, social factors contribute to cognitive development. 3, language has a specific role in developing cognitive domain. And finally, people learn with the help of the adults. The theory of Vygotsky is also aligned with the children learning, as children learning is associated with social interaction. Vygotsky also discussed that everyday concept builds the foundation for developing scientific concept. If scientific concepts are learned away from the children's own context, developing scientific concept could be limited. In this learning journey, teachers, parents, and skilled peers help the children learn, and play is the key activity of child learning. The present study will use the cultural historical theory, as the development of scientific literacy has an association with social and cultural settings. The development of children's scientific literacy is associated with how children learn from their learning centers and with home activities. This study is also aligned with the idea of zone of proximal development and scaffolding, which discusses the relationship between children's learning with the help of educators and adults. In this study, we reviewed the existing literature to understand how children develop scientific literacy in early childhood settings and early primary years using the cultural historical lens. 3 specific research questions are formulated. The first research question is, what activities are found in early years learning settings which could help develop scientific literacy among children? In this question, we wanted to understand the process of developing scientific literacy among children in early years. Secondly, we tried to understand how educators, parents, and peers support children in developing their scientific literacy. This section covers the zone of proximal development and scaffolding concepts. And the third question is, do the learning centers or preschools or primary schools consider the social and cultural context of the children in selecting play-based activities? The present study is a part of the main PhD research project, in which both quantitative and qualitative approaches are considered using document review, survey, digital video observation, and interview data collection techniques. This presentation provides only the findings from the literature review, in which data were analyzed using the narrative analysis procedure. While we use the term scientific literacy as the main keyword for searching articles from the databases, we found limited articles. Therefore, we extended our search using more keywords such as science literacy, science education, scientific concept development, scientific thinking development, or science knowledge development. We also use the terms play-based learning, or learning through play, or play, and early childhood education, or preschool, or kindergarten, or early years, or primary schools for searching articles. We considered only the research-based articles and excluded review papers, editorials, and short notes. In addition, we only considered the peer-reviewed journal and book chapters published in English. The data range for searching was from 2001 to 2022, and the studies conducted with children of early years were considered for analysis. We used 2 databases such as Web of Science and EBSCOhost Education, and found a total of 273 articles. After a screening process, finally, we considered 14 articles for the narrative analysis to understand the issues in a holistic manner. We excluded papers or book chapters which do not meet the criteria, such as not related to the topic and focused on higher primary, secondary, or university education, and for other reasons. This slide highlights how the development of scientific literacy is associated with children's play-based activities. Several studies showed a positive relationship between play-based learning and the development of scientific concepts, both at home and at institutions. Play-based activities also develop scientific concepts among children. Activities related to science learning at home and in schools engage children in developing their scientific concepts. Therefore, engaging children in play-based activities is suggested. According to the studies, science learning through play can help children meaningfully draw on their everyday experiences and activities as they explore science concept in context, eventually developing their scientific literacy. Through play-based learning activities, children gradually develop several skills, such as problem solving, self-regulation, and communication skills. These skills help the children create scientific concepts and their scientific understanding. Children discover science learning and with materials, and play becomes a part of everyday science. Intentional teaching of science in play-based activities then guides science inquiry in play, which establish science process skills of the children, eventually ensuring science learning. It is also found that children showed their interest in learning activities more at the end of preschool period and continued it to primary schools. However, we didn't find studies in line with the transition process. Developing scientific literacy among children depends on how they receive supports from others. Studies showed that children's scientific literacy increased from preschool to primary school. However, children with lower scientific literacy couldn't show more growth in later grades and need specific support from parents and educators. Studies also identified a lack in terms of the intentional focus of scientific literacy in play-based learning activities. Studies suggested that teachers' intentional support in terms of providing scientific concepts from everyday activities and applying them in their play activities is necessary. On the other hand, parents' conscious support in helping children in their play-based activities is evident, which help the children to develop their scientific concepts. However, it is yet to be discovered what perception the parents have in terms of developing scientific literacy. From the literature, it is evident that there is a relationship between children's social and cultural context and their development of scientific literacy. For instance, children's home and institutional learning environments determine how they develop their scientific literacy. Studies found that everyday play activities at home help them to develop their scientific literacy, and parents play an important role. It is also evident that a number of home and institutional factors also influence scientific literacy in the early years. For example, studies found that some specific factors, such as using a different language at home, parental lower educational background, inadequate material at home, and less involvement time of parents with children activities, have an adverse effect on developing scientific literacy. Here I present the main messages as well as the gaps for further research. The analysis found that while there are several studies on science education, science concepts, science knowledge, and on similar topics, the process of developing scientific literacy among children in early years is yet to be understood. Particularly, it is important to understand how children develop their scientific literacy within their own culture and context. There is an association between children's everyday learning concepts and the formation of scientific concepts. However, teachers' intentional teaching is important in enhancing children's scientific literacy. Therefore, understanding how educators could stimulate the process is also necessary. In addition, how educators and parents support children and what perception they hold regarding scientific literacy are two areas of possible investigation. Finally, studies identified that children's scientific literacy develop from preschool and primary school, but the initial differences in scientific literacy among the children exist in later grades. the reason behind the situation, and how the transition process of scientific literacy from preschool to primary schools happened is also another areas of understanding. I will work on these issues in my PhD research. Thank you very much.